Time for some more kitchen table astronomy at the Amherst kitchen table of Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe. Quick follow-up to our conversation last week with Smith astronomer James Lowenthal about the Dark Skies Initiative from two different perspectives. One was very excited about the Dark Skies Initiative and wanted us to know that this weekend, August 11th through 13th, that they're the Aruna Hill Days in Cummington. You can go and camp on this hill for $10 in Cummington, and if the weather is right for it, it's the Perseid meteor shower this weekend, a summer look at the Milky Way, Saturn and Jupiter rising around midnight, so people encouraging to take advantage of the dark skies in our area in Cummington. And not that it's an opposite perspective, but an additional perspective. A listener named Eve Vogel reached out because tonight, Amherst Town Council is going to weigh in on a new potential lighting ordinance, one of which would try to maintain more natural light at night or no dark skies at night. But E. Vogel saying it could potentially be dangerous for cyclists and pedestrians if they take this ordinance too far. So there's another side of the story. You can learn more about it at the Amherst Town Council tonight. And speaking of the other side of the story, we're talking with Mr. Universe about our favorite topic, aliens, which was the subject of a hearing in front of the U.S. Congress that our U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern decided to skip. He's not on that committee. He didn't really skip it, but yeah. He's promised to get to the bottom of finding aliens for me in Congress. But that is what Congress has been up to over these last couple of weeks.
Right. And oftentimes they talk about missing time as one of the hallmarks of alien abductions, for example.
Right.
And I listened to those hearings, and I think that time is missing. I'm never going to get it back.
Were you abducted by an alien during that time? Or just with a black hole of intellectual thought?
Right. But in all seriousness, we have talked many times before, some at another station, but also here also we talked about the claims of aliens, and that there have been congressional hearings, there have been Pentagon investigations, there is UAP task force, the UFOs are now unidentified aerial phenomena, and I think it has even moved up to unidentified anomalous phenomena, but it's still UAPs. And so I thought because these hearings took place about less than 2 weeks ago, and it was in the, I think, House Oversight Subcommittee, and these were bipartisan. I listened to AOC also asking questions and things like that. So I just want to hit on three things. Of course, I'm going to forget the count. So
okay.
Monte, you'll have to remind me about that.
So I'll try to remember what number we're on.
Okay. But three things based upon what the claims that are being made, and that is okay. But then the other aspect is why I am skeptical about these claims. And the third part is, what would it take to say, yeah, those are claims of alien presence anywhere in the universe, because so far we have none. That's the scientific community believes, that we still don't have even a microbe, evidence of a microbe from another planet.
That is life.
That is life.
Yeah. And it was fun. I wish I could have rolled tape when we were talking with James Lowenthal last week, the both of you talking about this hearing and poo-pooing it.
Well, so look, and I teach a class called Aliens, Close Encounters of a Multidisciplinary Kind at Hampshire. And so it's not, and I'm fascinated by it. And that's the reason why we have talked so many times about this topic. I mean, I think it would be the most amazing thing if it is true. And I would love for it to be true, because it's going to be mind-boggling. So let's talk about just a little bit about why this hearing has taken a little bit more importance. I have mentioned many times that New York Times story in 2017, that was a front page story about pilots seeing things and so on and so forth. And it started the ball rolling in terms of UFO hearings. And then the Congress asked for what's going on. We don't know what's going on, and hence there were hearings. And since there were hearings, the New York Times covered it, and then they covered it, and so there were more hearings. So there is a sort of like feedback loop, which I want people to be aware of how things develop. And I don't want to go into too much details about that, but this particular one, there is a task force that is with multiple people, including from Pentagon, including scientists, including some of the UFO folks or UAP folks. They have come out about, I think in April, their findings were that none of the things that have been claimed to have been potential visitors from outer space, there was not sufficient evidence for that. So that came out in April. But after that, David Grusch, he is a former intelligence officer. He left the government in April of this year.
He's the whistleblower.
He's the whistleblower, and interestingly, he has joined another foundation, which actually is a non-profit and about UAPs and things like that. So obviously, there is always another element where you can go and there is funding available. And again, that's a separate side of the story. But he has high clearance in terms of so classified materials. Okay, and all I'm saying today is based upon the fact that I have no clearance at all.
Yeah.
Even the stuff that I know, I think some of it is classified. So like, in my mind, they said, okay, you cannot access your own mind. But no, I have no clearance at all. So I am talking about the things that have been mentioned in public. So this whistleblower, he gave a deposition. He has provided notes again, and he testified under oath. And some of his claims include, and this was the explosive part of the testimony, that the US government has recovered, and he called it non-human biologics, around sort of like, I forgot the exact words, but basically around crashed vehicles. So clearly implying that there are spacecrafts from another planet that are here, that have crashed here, and there were remains of the people who were, or whatever aliens that were flying it. That's a pretty serious thing. Now, when asked, he himself has not seen those things. And that's always, this is the thing, but he says that he has several people who have first-hand knowledge of that. Now, he doesn't have it, but he says that a lot of people that he trusts. So that is plausible, okay? But then he argues, so this was the part of the testimony. And again, this is a sworn testimony. And then he also said that these things have been going on for over 80 years. And it's not just that, but in fact, other governments have been involved in it as well.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring.
Only a theoretical framework discussion.
So those are the claims. What to make of it? Why am I still a bit skeptical? I mean, in some sense, there are a lot of astronomers, astrobiologists, who are spending a lot of time in figuring out even sort of like, hey, are there microbes on Mars or not? Or
can we find one dead microbe of something that used to be alive on some other rock anywhere else in the solar system? One dead microbe.
And here we are talking about having sort of like, not just that, but having a spacecraft and then non-human biologics and so on and so forth. So to me, those are two very incongruous things. And people who do work on it, who have spent their lives on it, they are extremely skeptical about it. So just a couple of things of why on I am a little bit skeptical about it, and that is, if you think about the level of claims, to me it's always, when they talk about people who believe in UAPs, including David Grusch, the way he talks about it, it is about technology. We can we have reverse engineer technology, we have improved technology. It's always about technology, right? But if you think about what would be the impact of even a microbe, for example, but certainly about intelligent life, it's actually going to transform not just technology, but we are talking about philosophy, we are talking about physics, we are talking about astronomy, we are talking about all the fields, because the context that not just life evolved on this planet, it evolved somewhere else. Not just it evolved somewhere else, but it became complex enough to have species that actually could create tools, not just tools, but to create tools to make spacecrafts to fly across interstellar medium. Well, those are a lot of the questions about our own intelligence, about ourselves, about our biology. Can those kind of conditions lead to somewhere else, so on and so forth? So it would actually fundamentally transform most of our academic fields. And here, if you look at it, it's the mundaneness. It's not the most amazing, oh my goodness, they found technology. To me, the fact that when they talk about what they have found, it's so ordinary. It comes from science fiction films. Oh, because that's my big sort of like, objections to science fiction films about these type of things, because they oftentimes just talk about technology. Mm-hmm. No, technology is the least important thing, least interesting thing, because you would have questions about what are those, what kind, and the first question we have, is the molecule of life the same as DNA? Or is some other molecule working in? I mean, that's a fascinating question that we would ask even if we find a microbe on Mars or any place. Sort of like, where did they come from? We can actually tell a lot. If we find a spacecraft, we can tell a lot about when we find meteoroids, where they are from. Because, for example, what kind of exposure in the galaxy to cosmic rays or other things, that we can actually tell a lot about where would they have come from. What kind of spacecraft would have gone through. But if you look at the testimony, if you look at the claims, all of that curiosity, right? I mean, you would think, oh my goodness, I have 1 billion questions. And it's always about reverse engineering, technology. That is much more from science fiction than if you would have people who really think about these things.
What would it take for you, Salman Hameed, who I know actually believes there must be life elsewhere in the universe? Because I think this is point number 3 that you're trying to make.
Right.
What kind of evidence would make you believe that? And if this guy's secondhand evidence, even he says he didn't see it. That being said, government lies to us a lot about different things over the course of its history. Could be that they are just really good at keeping this one particular secret.
Okay, so first of all, government is not very good at keeping secrets. I mean, you know that from Edward Snowden to WikiLeaks and so on and so forth, right? And remember, and this is the biggest one, right? I mean, so if I can just hitch back before I go to number 3, and I'm glad, Monte, you're keeping me on track for the numbers. If I can just say one more thing. To me, the way people talk about these things is a lot like when people claim about that moon landing was a hoax. Because they would bring up one thing, and you say, oh yeah, there are no stars. Well, yeah, it's the exposure time. Then they come to the second thing, and the third thing, and the fourth thing. In the same way, these conversations are about single points. Oh, they were non-biologicals. Okay. But David Grusch has also claimed that there was a space, he's mentioned that there's a Cold War going on between different nations to find these UAPs for the last 80, 90 years. In fact, he has also claimed that Vatican is hiding evidence too.
Or now it's the Da Vinci Code.
Exactly. So that's where I'm going at. So that didn't come up in the hearings, but he has actually said that in another interview that in 1933, Mussolini found, they also, in Italy, they actually found a UAP, and that was on their base, but the Vatican helped the US get it, snap it from there, and bring it back. Now, okay, you go like, wait a minute. So that's a whole other story. So and there are a lot of stories like that about intergovernmental intrigue. And so you were talking about secrets. So it's not just about the US. Now we are talking about international intrigue, and they've all kept these UAPs secret and so on and so forth. So the way to deal with that, like the moon landing stuff, is, okay, let's imagine this is true. Let's imagine, yes, they have been recovered. What would it take for these type of things to stay secret? What would it take? Okay, so Vatican is now involved now. They're saying Pope hasn't answered yet. But look at all of these things connected together. If the scenario that aliens have been crashing here since 1930s is true, what would it take to keep the world from not transforming, by the way, because our philosophy, biology, physics, chemistry, astronomy is roughly the same what you would imagine without aliens, right? And so, to me, that would be even harder to believe that we have all of this phenomenal, revolutionary, the biggest kind of discoveries out there. We know it. Not just we. A lot of people know it. A lot of people in different countries know it. And yet, we have managed to keep the world the same, as if there were no aliens. To me, that is even more mind-blowing than actually having aliens, because we have managed to not change our world and act as if everything is exactly the same. We're not going to revolutionize anything. So that's one part. But let's talk about, of course, I think there are intelligent beings out there, and this is another slippery slope that comes in. This was evident in the congressional hearings, that you go from saying whether that is true or not to, of course, but there is life out there. Universe is so big. Yes, universe is big. And yes, there are intelligent life, but that is a very different question than if they are here or not. And I am not one of those people who think that it's impossible for them to come here because the distances between stars is too much. I think we don't know. There may be ways to do that. By the way, David Grusch also mentioned interdimensional aliens in the congressional testimony. So that's a whole other thing. Like, interdimensional? What do you mean? Okay, so I'm not even bringing it up. I'm just saying that all these other things which individually if you look at those claims and you investigate it, you go like, what? But people forget and take bits and pieces of it, right? So I am of the view that, sure, if aliens are advanced and they can come here, they can find a way. I don't think just distances may be a barrier. Why would they come here? That's a whole other thing. We think we are very important. I mean, we live in the outskirts of our own Milky Way galaxy. Nobody cares. That's what I think. I'm sorry to say, but but really, no, aliens would not come here. But anyway, they can if they want to, right? So I don't see that as an issue. But we have had cases. We have seen, for example, Martian meteorite, ALH 84001 in 1996, I think. There was a claim for that. And then there was a paper that got published. They thought they were microbes from Mars, relics, sort of like, remnants of microbes from Mars, long gone microbes, but there remains in there. And then scientists kept on looking, testing, and things like that. And today, most astronomers believe that actually the evidence was not sufficient. You have Tabita star, the star that we thought that, that was really interesting, that was discovered. They had a weird light curve from Kepler data that has been discovering extrasolar planets. And this light curve, people couldn't figure out what was that. And there was this question, could it be something like a mega structure discovered by, sort of like created by, or building constructed by aliens? But then there were other astronomers got in. They figured out, no,
It's dust.
it's dust,
I hate
right?
when that's always the answer.
So there are many cases, like, we talked a couple of weeks ago about gamma ray bursts. We didn't know what gamma ray burst was. And one of the things is, you say, well, we don't know. And then after 30 years, they're like, okay, so there were new telescopes that were built. They was like, okay, how do we solve this problem? And eventually figured out, okay, so we now know, amazing things that you can have neutron star mergers, or black hole neutron star mergers, and so on and so forth. So there are unknown things in astronomy that happens, and there is a process in which here is the evidence, and then other people get a chance to actually look at it, test it, and so on and so forth. It takes time. Now, if there is evidence for that, and in the 2017 New York Times article, they had claimed that they have things that they have recovered from it, and the quote was in the New York Times article from one of the people that were claiming these things, that it is as if you give Da Vinci a garage opener. Think about how he would be thinking. It's like us, the kinds of things we have recovered. But 2 years later, New York Times retracted that claim that they had recovered other things. And I think that retraction was important, but it was just a tiny little one sentence. Oh, by the way, those turned out to be of human origins. So my point is, sure. I mean, I think you don't need that kind of sort of like 30 years of research on that. We can actually just see those things and ask those questions. Wait a minute. If you just see something, you don't even need biologics. If you see something alien technology, you can actually make a lot of assumptions about, do they have hands? Oh, what kind of things they have made it from? So we can actually guess what kind of planet they are from, because these are the type of claims, for example, archaeological claims on Earth. These are long gone civilizations or long gone human beings. We can still figure it out, that we can make a lot of interesting assumptions about where they were, what kind of climate was there, what kind of materials they had access to, what kind of tools did they use, why would they use these kind of tools? Well, if it's humans, or are they sort of like early hominid species, what were they doing? So as you can see, there are a lot of really fascinating questions. Compare that to the kind of claims that they make. It's all directly to technology and directly to reverse engineering. So it may still be true. My mind would be blown even more if for 80 years we have had it here and we've kept it secret and it's all about technology. To me, it's far more unbelievable than tomorrow aliens showing up in a flying saucer above Amherst.
And if they do, you might want to go to Amherst's town council meeting tonight to talk about whether the skies are dark enough to see them, or whether streetlights need to be positioned better to try to help people on bikes and pedestrians. And don't forget, in Cummington this weekend, there's a dark skies event at Aruna Hill. You can go camping on this hill in Cummington, and you can see the Milky Way, you can see the Perseid meteor shower, and more. So see the things that you know you can actually see in the sky.
There's one last thing I want to say, and I know we have gone too long, but my worry about all of these hearings and other things is, it is right, it has turned into a partisan thing where people are talking about government disclosures, government overreach. My concern about these UAP things is it's going to become a Republican-Democrat things, where Republicans are saying, look, their funding, where is the funding going? Are they declaring or not? And so on and so forth. And already Tucker Carlson is a big fan of UAPs and so on and so forth. So this is another way of how you can take an issue and put it into a political context.